What's up, everybody? I'm Trent, and this is the first episode of my weekly NFL podcast. Today, we're going to be going over some of the latest news around the league and then hopping into my top 10 power rankings going into week 3 of the NFL season. This podcast is going to air once a week. We're going to be just going over the latest news around the league and all sorts of stuff relating to the NFL. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about today is the Jalen Ramsey trade request. This happened after the week 2 matchup for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ramsey and his head coach got into it on the sideline. They had a little disagreement on whatever it was. It turned into both of them yelling at each other. And after the game, Ramsey went, talked to his agent, and decided it was finally time to move on from Jacksonville, and they requested a trade. There's been multiple times in the past where Ramsey's name's come up in trade talks from Jacksonville. They haven't always agreed with the head coach, the front office, and Ramsey. But this time I think he definitely needs to be traded because you can't have a head coach and a player visibly clashing like that. It's not good for the team. It's not good for the locker room. Ramsey's a top 2 corner in the league. He's right up there with Gilmore. You could say either of them's the best corner in the league, but he's going to make an instant splash on whatever team he ends up on. Some of the teams that are showing interest are Kansas City, Baltimore, Minnesota, Oakland, Philadelphia, and Seattle. Obviously, any team in the league would love to have Ramsey, but some of these teams are better fits than others. I think Philadelphia is a great fit. They have a great team already. Ramsey wants to win, but they have a weak secondary. If you put Ramsey on that team, I think they turn into Super Bowl contenders. Kansas City, same thing. Great offense, weak secondary. You put Ramsey on that team, I think they turn into Super Bowl contenders. I don't know where Ramsey's going to go. If I had to guess, I would say he's probably going to end up in Philadelphia, maybe Oakland because they want to make another splash after what happened with Antonio Brown. But I don't know if they want another person with such a big personality after what happened with Antonio Brown. Regardless, whoever ends up with Jalen Ramsey is going to be extremely happy. They're going to get a great player, and I think this could really be huge for the NFL season this year. So the next player we're going to talk about is Antonio Brown. As you all know, Antonio Brown was released by the New England Patriots. He was signed as a low-risk, high-reward player, very Bill Belichick signing. He was only with the team for 11 days before they released him. The day after he was signed, the first report came out with his sexual assault report. Patriots didn't know what was going on before they signed him, weren't sure what was going on. They kept him. He played 1 week with the Patriots, looked great, and then another report came out. The Patriots were ready to go, ready to play with him, but then they decided that it was time to move on. It was too much attention or whatever it may be, and they released Antonio Brown. I think the Pats are ready to move on. It's Bill Belichick. He knows what he's doing. That team's very focused. They're focused on playing the Jets this week. I don't think they're worried about Antonio Brown. I think the Patriots were fine before he came there. It would have been great for them to have him, but they're not going to struggle without Antonio Brown. The problem for Antonio Brown is I don't know if Antonio Brown's going to play again this year. Being a locker room cancer or a diva, whatever you want to call him, is one thing, but the sexual assault things that are coming up is a whole nother thing. If Bill Belichick can't handle his problem with Antonio Brown and doesn't want anything to do with it, I don't know who can. I don't know if he's going to be able to find another team until this all clears up. Hopefully for Brown, this all clears up and he can find a new team to play for and he can just get back to playing football, but I don't know how likely that is. Last thing I'm going to talk about before I hop into the power rankings is the injuries to future Hall of Fame quarterbacks Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger. Both of these guys suffered pretty severe injuries in their Week 2 games. We'll start with Drew Brees. He was throwing a pass, got hit in the right hand, which is his throwing hand, by Aaron Donald. He suffered an injury that's supposed to keep him sidelined for 6 to 8 weeks. I think that this is really a big hit for the Saints, obviously. In my opinion, Brees is a top 5 quarterback of all time, and he's got a great connection with guys like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. But in the end, I think the Saints are going to be okay. Brees will be back for the end of the season, middle of the season, whenever it is. He'll be back for the playoffs, and I think they have great backups. Taysom Hill's a very versatile quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater's a great backup. He's had a lot of starting experience. I think they'll be okay until Brees gets back, and then they'll make a good push into the playoffs and go from there. As for Roethlisberger, obviously he had the elbow injury. He's going to be out for the entire season. This is a huge hit for the Steelers. It's time for Mason Rudolph to step up. and connect with some of those other young players like Juju, James Washington, and see how he does. But I think Roethlisberger will be back next year. I don't think anything crazy is going to happen where Mason Rudolph comes and takes his starting place. It's tough for the Steelers to see their quarterback who they've had for years go down with an injury and be without Roethlisberger, Bell, Brown, all for the first year. It's tough for them, but I think they'll be okay in a few years. They got some great young players, Juju, all those great young players. So I think they'll be okay. Now I'm going to be going over my top 10 power rankings going into week 3 of the NFL season. Obviously, this is all subject to change. A lot can happen in even 1 week, as we saw last week with all the injuries. But this is going to go from 10 to 1. Before we get into that, I want to go over my honorable mention, which is the Saints. They didn't make the list this week, but that's not anything to do with that roster. We don't know what's going on with Drew Brees. We don't know how good they're going to be without Drew Brees. Once Brees is back, I think the Saints are going to be fine, like I said. But this week, didn't make the cut. Coming in at number 10 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're 1-1 with a win over the Colts, but a loss to the Lions. I thought without Melvin Gordon this year, they were really going to struggle, but hasn't really been a problem for them. Eckler stepped up big time. He's had some big games, um, and he's been really just taking that role like he needed to. They had a rough game versus the Lions, but Philip Rivers is a great quarterback. We've been seeing it for years. I think that the Chargers are going to be okay, and I think they're going to be a good playoff team this year. In at number 9, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They're also 1-1 with a win over the Falcons and a close loss to the Packers. The biggest thing I'd say for the Vikings, the most surprising thing, has been Dalvin Cook. He has looked great. He's looked like one of the best running backs in the league. He's been injured the past couple of years. We knew that when they took him early that he was a great player, but this year he's just been extremely explosive and he's had some great games. The Vikings obviously have tons of talent at receiver with Thielen and Diggs. They have a great secondary with Xavier Rhodes. I think what it comes down to for this team is if Kirk Cousins can step it up, and I think he will. I think the Vikings are a great team. They have a really good roster. DNs are great with Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffin, guys like that. I think the Vikings are a great team, and that's why they come in at number 9 this week. At number 8, we have the Seattle Seahawks, who are the first undefeated team on the list. Um, they have wins over the Bengals and the Steelers. One of the biggest things for the Seahawks this year has been rookie DK Metcalf. He looks like he has a bright future. Obviously, coming into the season, coming into the draft, people had high hopes for Metcalf. He slipped a little bit, but I think the Seahawks are extremely happy that he fell to them because he's been looking great tearing up NFL defenses. Um, the Seahawks have a much improved defense this year with Clowney being there, Ziggy Ansah there. I think that they're going to be doing a lot better of a job putting pressure on the opposing quarterback. But the player that stood out to me the most on the Seahawks has been second-year running back Rashad Penny. I think he's showing flashes of dominance. When Penny was taken early in the first round 2 years ago, a lot of people were surprised because the Seahawks had so many holes to fill. But it was never a question of whether Penny was a good player or not. Penny's been a great player. Back when he was in college at San Diego State, he was a great running back. That's why he was taken in the first round where he was. He's starting to show out, and I think it's going to be a great year for him. So that's why we have the Seahawks at number 8. Number 7 in the power rankings, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They are 1-1. They have a win over the Redskins, but they lost to the Falcons. One thing I want to make clear is when they lost to the Falcons, they did not have a healthy team. They didn't have Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey. They're two top receivers. They're great receivers for any team, and that's a huge loss. So I think that's part of the reason why they lost to the Falcons. And if they had had those guys, they might be 2-0 like some of the other teams on this list. I think the biggest strength for this team, though, is on their defense. The D-line and the linebackers, led by Fletcher Cox on the D-line. He's one of the best interior linemen in the whole league. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for years, and I think he's going to continue to keep that defensive unit locked in and ready to go. They have a weak secondary, but it's improving. Ronald Darby's a great corner. They're just looking for someone on the other side. Um, Maybe they do go out and get Jalen Ramsey. If they do, they'll jump way up on these power rankings. But for now, we'll keep them at 7. Wentz looks good. He needs to stay healthy. But let's not forget, 2 years ago, he was an MVP candidate. He probably would have won the MVP if he stayed healthy. So, assuming Wentz can stay healthy and the Eagles can turn it up, We have them at number 7 on the power rankings this week. Number 6 is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 2-0. They beat the Panthers and the Saints, but they did beat the Saints without Drew Brees for most of the game. One of the biggest impact players for the Rams has been Cooper Kupp. He's back after the ACL tear last year, and he's looked great. He hasn't had any slow games or anything like that. Defenses can't bring him down. He's got a great connection with Jared Goff, and I think that's a key player for their team. Obviously, Rams have Aaron Donald, in my opinion, the best defensive player in the league, and the best player in the whole league, either side of the ball. Aaron Donald started off last season slow. He started off this season a little slow, but we saw what he did last year after starting slow. He broke the record for interior lineman sacks, had over 20 sacks, and I think he's going to replicate that again this year. We've seen a lighter workload for Todd Gurley, which I think is good. I think he'll be ready to go at the end of the season rather than wearing him out now. And another player for the Rams who's looked good has been Clay Matthews. He's looking like he was back in his Packers days. He's out there making plays, which is great for both Matthews and the Rams. I think the Rams are a great team. That's why they were in the Super Bowl last year. This week I have them at number 6 on the power rankings. Now we're into the top 5 for the power rankings, and coming in at number 5, I have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are 2-0 with tough divisional wins over the Bears and the Vikings. Those are both obviously huge wins for them. But the biggest thing for the Packers is just the fact that they have a healthy Aaron Rodgers back. When Aaron Rodgers is healthy, as we've seen for the past however many years, he's one of the most skilled quarterbacks to ever play the game. He's got great receivers, with Davante Adams being at the top of that, arguably one of the best receivers in the whole league. But it's not just him. They have a lot of depth after him, with guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, those other receivers. But on the offensive side of the ball, I think they need to continue to give the ball to Aaron Jones. He's a great player. He's a great running back, and it gets the pressure off Aaron Rodgers, allows him to make those amazing throws that we see him do every game. Another big thing for the Packers, Aaron Rodgers has always been great, but they don't always have a great defense. This year, this offseason, they signed some new players, brought some new guys in to improve that defense, and I think it's showing. They've been able to get more pressure. They have great young secondary. And I think that's why the Packers are going to be so good this year, coming in at number 5 on this week's power ranking. At number 4, we have the Dallas Cowboys. This was a pretty big surprise for me coming into this season. I expected the Cowboys to be good, but I didn't expect them to be a great team. Right now, they're 2-0 with wins over the Giants and the Redskins. Once again, those are both tough divisional games. Giants aren't that good, the Redskins aren't that good, but they're divisional teams, so it's always going to be a tough game. Dak's been playing out of his mind in his contract year, trying to prove himself, prove that he deserves to be the highest paid quarterback like he thinks. And in my opinion, I don't think he deserves that, but he sure has been playing like it. The Cowboys have a great offensive line with arguably the best running back in the league. Maybe it's even the best offensive line in the league. So that's a formula for great offense, and it's been showing this year. The defense, it's a young defense, but it's a good defense with Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith on the come up. They're both great linebackers. They go sideline to sideline, and then they have DeMarcus Lawrence getting pressure on the quarterback. That's a great defense with a great offense. Dak finally has great receivers too. He's throwing to Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup. So Dallas Cowboys just have a really good all-around team, and that's why I have them at number 4 in the power rankings this week. At number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens were probably the biggest surprise to me so far this season. I expected them to be a decent team, but so far they've shown that they're a great team. Ravens are 2-0 with wins over the Dolphins and the Cardinals. Dolphins and the Cardinals both aren't great teams, but the Ravens have just looked like they can't be stopped out there. Lamar Jackson, everyone knew he can run, but he's been proving everyone wrong. He's been lighting up defenses, throwing the ball over everyone's head, and I think it's a huge prove-it year for him, and he's doing great. MVP candidate right now. The defense for the Ravens looks great, despite the key losses of Terrell Suggs and C.J. Mosley. I thought the defense was going to struggle without those guys. Suggs has been there forever. He's been a key piece to all of those defenses. And I think Mosley is one of the best linebackers in the whole league. But they've managed to keep working without those guys, and I think they're doing a great job. Like I said, they've played bad teams, but you can't really hold that against them. Um, they have a strong running game going, and that's what's opening up Lamar Jackson's arm over the top. I think that this week's a huge week for them against the Chiefs. I think it's a big prove-it week against a good team. It's the first real competition they'll have, so we'll see how that goes this week. Coming in at number 2, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this is pretty straightforward. The biggest thing about the Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes. He's shown that he is that guy. He can't be stopped. He can only be slowed down. Going into this year, I didn't think that Pat Mahomes could repeat what he did last year, just because historically no one's been able to have that kind of production. But maybe Patrick Mahomes is the first guy who can really put up numbers like that every year, and so far this year it looks like he's going to do it again. The Chiefs are 2-0 with wins over the Jaguars and the Raiders. Jaguars have a great defense. Didn't seem to stop Patrick Mahomes. Like I said, he just can't be stopped this year so far. The receivers, other than Tyreek Hill, have been stepping up big time. Having Tyreek Hill get hurt and be out for a big chunk of the season should be a huge hit for the Chiefs, but it hasn't been so far. Guys like Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, all these names stepping up for the Chiefs and just playing out of their mind. The Chiefs still, in my opinion, now that Rob Gronkowski retired, have the best tight end in the whole league in Travis Kelce. He hasn't even been doing too much yet this season, but you know he's going to heat up, and I think it's going to be scary once he does. The Chiefs don't have a great defense, but it's improved slightly. Tyrann Mathieu coming in was a big pickup. Maybe they add Jalen Ramsey if they do. I don't know. That's just a scary, scary team. But for now, we have them at number 2 on the power rankings. But they could definitely shoot up to number 1. And finally, coming in at number 1 on the Week 3 power rankings, I have, you can probably guess, the New England Patriots. Patriots are 2-0 with wins over the Steelers and the Dolphins. Again, they didn't play great teams yet, but you can't really hold that against them. Brady still looks extremely sharp at the age of 42, something no other quarterback has ever done before. Patriots, like always, have a great offense with some running backs and wide receivers. Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead have been holding down the running game, and you can't leave James White out of that as the pass-catching back. He's arguably the best at what he does in the whole league. As for receivers, Antonio Brown's a tough hit, but like I said, going into this season, they had no expectations to have Antonio Brown. Still have guys like Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon. I think that the Patriots are going to be completely fine on offense with Brady back there. Brady's proved in the past that he doesn't even need great receivers. He turned Julian Edelman, who was a quarterback coming out of college, into arguably a Hall of Fame wide receiver, slot receiver. If there is only one weak point on this Patriots team, I would definitely say it's the injured offensive line. Isaiah Wynn's out for, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks. Marcus Cannon missed a week, but he should be back. The one thing on this Patriots team I will say has been the most impressive is the defense. Every Patriots team with Tom Brady always has a great offense, but the defense usually lets up a ton of points. This year, they've only let up 3 points in 2 games, with a shutout to the Dolphins and holding the Steelers to only a field goal. They haven't let up a touchdown in 2 games of the season going into this week against the Jets. Defense is led by star players like Stephon Gilmore, like I said earlier, who I think is arguably the best corner in the league. Devin McCourty, underrated player for the Patriots. He's always there, always making the play. And then the insane linebacking core of Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, who looks like his old self. I think that the Patriots are just a scary team this year, and they're looking to repeat the Super Bowl again. The defense even goes back to the Super Bowl. You could argue that, they're only doing good because they're playing bad teams. But if you go back to the Super Bowl against arguably the best team in the league last year, the Rams, the Patriots only allowed 3 points. So, like I said, that defense is scary. I think they're going to continue to improve. And I think that the Patriots are number 1 on the power rankings this week. So just to go over the list one more time, at number 10, Los Angeles Chargers. Number 9, Minnesota Vikings. 8 was the Seattle Seahawks. Philadelphia Eagles came in at number 7, and the Los Angeles Rams came in at 6. In the top 5, we had the Packers at number 5, the Dallas Cowboys at 4, Baltimore Ravens at number 3, Kansas City Chiefs at 2, and the New England Patriots at 1. Like I said earlier, these rankings are subject to change. A lot can happen in a week, in a game, even one play. A team could go from the top of this list to right off the list if an injury were to happen. These rankings change every week, but going into week 3 of the NFL season, this is what I have the power rankings as. The last thing I want to talk about today is my game of the week, and that is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Baltimore Ravens. In my opinion, this is a huge prove-it game for both teams and both quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are probably the two leading candidates in the MVP race right now, and this game's gonna show if they can go against good teams and compete against each other. I think for Lamar Jackson, if he goes out there, lights up the Chiefs defense, and the Ravens pull off a real tough win against a real competitive team, he's going to be a serious candidate for MVP. Same goes for Patrick Mahomes. We know what he can do. We've seen it before, but this is his first real test of the season going up against a good 2-0 Baltimore Ravens team who have a great defense. So I think that's a big game this week, and we'll see how that goes. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'll be back next week with week 2 of the podcast. That's all for today. Thanks again. See you next week.